शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पदान् सहगना ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश। नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So welcome back to our Tuesday and Thursday sessions on Vaishnav Ninda. So this is some of the last themes which we have been discussing in the Vaishnav Ninda series. And today is one of the last themes which we'll be discussing from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's work. In the last class and in the last to last class, we have been discussing after Bhaktivinoda Thakur has analyzed who is a Vaishnava, both from the Bhagavad perspective and from the Chaitanya Charitamrita perspective, that anyone who takes the Naam, especially once, not Namabas, but Naam, once, he is to be considered a Vaishnava and he should be respected. And there are dusht, there are wicked people who see faults in Vaishnavas. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions how wicked people see faults in Vaishnavas in three ways. So just to keep the session live and interactive, I would like to know what are the three ways in which wicked people find faults with Vaishnavas. So firstly, my question is, who are these wicked people? Raise your hand. Who would like to answer? Who are these wicked people which Bhaktivinoda Thakur is referring to? Raise your hand. Who see faults in Vaishnavas? Yes. Yes, Karishma Mataji.
The wicked people are us ourselves, since people outside the devotee community don't know of this. So we are the ones who end up criticizing the devotees.
Yeah, this is a fact which we have to deeply admit in our heart. And I'll tell you, sometimes outside people I have met, and especially those from a very degraded background, they can be big businessmen or simple people also, who have been addicted to bad life like meat eating or alcohol. When they take up to Vaishnavism and they give up, they glorify them genuinely from their heart, and they are really astonished. They are stunned in one sense. It's like a state of shock for them. Just like, Yamraj was, he fell unconscious when he heard that Jagai and Madai were delivered in the pastime of, that famous pastime which is there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat. So Yamraj was, astonished, and he fell in ecstasy, thinking of the mercy of Mahaprabhu. So outsiders usually don't criticize. It is we, the Vaishnavas. Uh, okay, the next question we will take up. I'm just choosing so that others also get opportunity. Now, how wicked people see three types of defects in Vaishnava? What are these three types? So raise your hand. Three ways they find defects in Vaishnavas. Which are the three ways? Anyone would like to answer? Nobody. Yes, Nupur Mataji. Yeah,
Like people see this first is a person before coming to devotional service, whatever defects he had before, so people start criticizing on those previous defects. Then second is the defects which are like about to get over, which is like only because of time it's like remaining, maybe in after performance of some devotional service that anartha will also go. So those defects people criticize. And the
right.
third is some defects which because of providence it appears like
Yes.
in that particular devotee, and then others criticize that devotee on those providence.
Yes, yes. Daivatpanna. And especially this Daiva happens uh, even in advanced devotees, even in Mahabhagavats. Sometimes these Daivatpanna happen and we get bewildered about it. So these are the three. Perfect. This is the correct answer. So having discussed now all this, we discussed in the last two classes two verses of the Bhagavad Gita, that is 9.30 and 9.31, Apichet Sudaracharo and Shipram Bhavati Dharmatma. If we repeatedly contemplate from the Lord's vision, these two verses and understand these verses, we will never criticize Vaishnavas, never find with Vaishnavas. And having understood this most confidential purport of devotion, we practice and take wholeheartedly to devotion, and even save those who, because of their previous conditioning, might leave devotional service and they become a little averse. We go and save them. We become very dear to Krishna. We become very dear to Krishna. And Krishna will, always remember us. So these two verses are the most important verses. That's why practically for each verse we devoted one class. Now today, after discussing these verses, let us go to the next theme, what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is discussing. So next theme is more of a conclusion now. The conclusion to the entire discussion of Bhaktivinoda Thakur is coming to an end. So let us now go begin with today's session. So here we discuss these verses 9.30 and 31. We had discussed this, right? So let us now go to, after discussing these two verses quite in detail, Let's go to the next theme now here. Okay, here something has gone wrong. Okay. It is offensive to criticize of a Vaishnava for his waning faults or for any fault that appears by providence. So here is the theme. So what is offense? To criticize a Vaishnava for his faults or that fault appears by providence. Okay. Now Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Daivat apatita ye dosha taha dekayao Vaishnave ke ninda karibena. Please do not criticize a Vaishnava even upon noticing a defect that has befallen him by providence. Daivad apatita ye dosha taha, which has befallen him by providence. Dekiyao, even if you see Vaishnava ke ninda karibe na. Don't criticize a Vaishnava. And even if you see in front of your eyes, but dear devotees, don't, there is a saying in English, which is again from a Vedic saying, the greatest jump we can take is jump to conclusions. So this kind of a jump will lead to our fall. It will lead to our fall. So even if you have seen, kindly deliberate deeply. Try to see and hear both sides of the stories. There must be some higher arrangement. Refer to Guru Sadhu Shastra and just don't come towards some conclusion seeing that defect. If you have seen it also, that's what here Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. Even if you're upon noticing that defect, but don't criticize, which has come by Daiva Utpanna, Daiva Apatita. So there are, in fact, there are three levels of seeing things. Again, from the Shastra Darshan, I'm speaking now. One is what is called as the immediate cause. The second is called as the remote cause. And the third is called as the ultimate cause. So the immediate cause of Parikshit's, getting that curse is, the immediate cause is Shringi Rishi. So Shringi Rishi can be directly blamed. Parikshit Maharaj can directly blame Shringi Rishi, that he is the cause of my, being cursed to die. There can be a remote cause. Oh, maybe I have done some sinful action. And because of that, I did this kind of activity to Shamik Rishi. And this is the reaction I'm getting. So Prabhupada, mentions actually the whole act of Parikshit Maharaj. It was not expected because Parikshit Maharaj, from what we are studying from the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is very evident that he was a Nitya Siddha from the spiritual world. He was a Mahabhagavat. He was a Nitya Siddha from the spiritual world. Right from birth, he had darshan of Krishna and he never forgot Krishna for a moment. So that is the exalted quality of a Nitya Siddha. So his garlanding Shamik Rishi with a dead snake, when Parikshit did that, when he came back to his kingdom, he deliberated and he immediately started repenting. Let whatever calamity, let it befall upon me and not my family members. Immediately. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that a great soul, the symptom of a great soul is that immediately when he does something wrong, he immediately repents for him. And such repentance purifies that soul immediately of any wrongdoing. But here, in the case of Parikshit Maharaj, it was not because of his karma, not the remote cause, because Krishna orchestrates the whole thing for him. It was Krishna's plan. Krishna's Rishikesh, the controller of all the senses, inspired Parikshit Maharaj to take his arrow and pick up the snake and put it on the neck of Shamik Rishi. So it was Krishna's plan, because Krishna wanted, his pure devotee to come back to his spiritual world, because Krishna was feeling the separation from his pure devotee Parikshit Maharaj. And through this pastime, where Parikshit is going to leave this world and going to fast at the bank of Ganges, he wanted to benedict the whole world with Srimad Bhagavatam. So it was the Krishna's divine plan behind it. And this is what is called as the ultimate cause. So there are these different levels of causes, and one should deliberate and never discuss immediately when we see any defect. Go and discuss, this devotee, I saw him doing this. One should be very thoughtful, one should be very gambhir, and one should deliberate, one should have that sattvic buddhi. And usually the conditioned soul's mind takes pleasure in these kind of activities. You tell the conditioned soul to take the tapasya of deliberating within, or introspection, to do introspection within ourselves and see our faults, or to introspect and deliberate deeply upon the scriptures, the mind will become tired and wants to go to sleep. That's why in the Bhagavatam class we feel sleepy. But the same mind becomes hyperactive when externally, you try to see faults in others. Oh, I'm so intelligent. The mind will pat you. See how intelligent you are, able to find this fault and defect in him. Wow, what a sharp intelligence you have. So this is how the mind congratulates. And that is how it binds us in this material world. So that is why we should not criticize a Vaishnava even upon noticing a defect which has befallen by providence. And here I gave this beautiful example of the providence of Parikshit Maharaj, and discuss the three causes: the immediate cause, the remote cause, and the ultimate cause. The ultimate cause is Sri Krishna. Tat Sambandhe Karbhajan Boli Ache. In this regard, Karbhajan says, Karbhajan is one of the Navagandhas. Swapada Moolam Bhajata Priyasya Tektvan Bhavasya Hari Pareshah Vikarma Yachot Patitam Kadachin Dhunoti Sarvam Ridhisanyavishta. This we had also seen when we referred to the Chaitanya Charitamrita verses. Yandra Mukhe Ek Bar Krishna Te Vaishnav, and then few verses, such a Vaishnava need not do, the Varnashram Dharma, and he will get purified. So that time this was also quoted. Again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is quoting now here. So here it is said, entering into the heart of one who worships his lotus feet. Swapada Moolam Bhajata Priyasya, who is very dear, Priyasya, to him, and who has given up his inclination to others. Tektva Anya Bhavasya, worship of Devtas, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. He has given up all this. The Supreme Lord Hari, Paresha, removes all sinful activities, Vidnoti, Kalmasha, that has somehow occurred to him. Vikarma Yachot Patita Kadachan. He removes everything. So this is a very solace-giving statement from Krishna. And again, we cannot, somehow, misutilize the statement of Krishna and commit sinful activity and say, anyway, Krishna is there in my heart and he'll purify me. No. This is what this verse is saying. Vikarma Yachot Patitam Kadachin. By default, a Vaishnava is averse to committing sin, but by providence, something happened like this. Then, he sincerely laments, and the Lord understands the sincerity of the disciple, because you cannot cheat the Lord who is there in the heart. The Lord is the cheater of all the cheaters. That is how, he's addressed in the Vibhuti Yoga. So you cannot cheat him. Dhutam Chalatam Asmi. I am the gamblers of all gamblers, Krishna says. So, Krishna understands the sincerity of that soul, and Krishna will purify him sitting in the heart. And this is the criteria. Bhajata Priyasya. The Lord is very, very dear to his devotees, and we are what? Tattva Anya Bhavasya. We are fully, exclusively surrendered to Krishna, and we don't take shelter of anyone else. At that, these are the conditions in which Krishna does this. Daivutpanna doshera sad uddesha vetita alochana karile Vaishnav Nindara Aparadha Hoy. Now, here Bhaktivinoda Thakur is explaining. What is he saying? That without a good purpose, sad uddesha, if one discusses a defect that has come about by private providence, daivutpanna dosha vetit alochana karila Vaishnav Nindara Aparadha. If he engages, is the offense of criticizing a Vaishnava. So what exactly constitutes offense is very clearly brought out in this statement of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he is now only mentioning Daivutpanna, but the other two also, the first and the second also, if we discuss the defects, without a good purpose, then we are engaging in criticizing a Vaishnava. Next section. Mool Kata a Vaishnavara Mithya Apavada O Purvukta Teen Prakara Dosh Loy Alochana Karile Nam Aprada Hoite Nam Spurti Hoy Na. Now, please hear very, very attentively. What happens when you do such kind of offense? The basic point is that, Mool Kata, if one discusses a false acquisition, a Vaishnavara Mithya Apavad, false acquisition, on a Vaishnavara Mithya Apavad, and the above mentioned three types of defects. Oh, Purvukta Teen Prakar Dosh Lai. So the three kinds of defects we have discussed, previous to coming to spiritual life, while practicing spiritual life when all his sins are being destroyed, and Daivutpanna. Or making false allegations or acquisitions on a Vaishnava based on one's own perceptions about reality. As a result of offending the holy name, Karile Nam Aparad Hoite, there is no appearance of the holy name. So here in the square brackets have a significance. Anyone knows what is the reason of square bracket first? I would like to know first, before you all raise a hand, why square bracket is given? There are two kinds of brackets given, square bracket and round bracket in English. So the square bracket, what is the reason? Anyone knows? Okay, first I'll discuss this and then take up this question. So square bracket is always given when a certain philosophical truth is given, but the author actually what that philosophical truth, he makes it emphatic and clear. Round bracket is for something else. When you're making a sentence that this person had gone to Rome and from there he went to, so from there refers to from Rome. So there you put a round bracket that explains the continuity of the statement. That is a round bracket. But a square bracket clarifies the term emphatically, which the verse or the author might have not mentioned it, but the acharyas make it very, very clear. Like, in the Bhagavad Gita, there is this famous verse, 2.16. 2.16 is Tattvadarshina. Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata. Ubayorapi drashtantas, tanayos, tanayasi tattva darshibi. So here I am, bringing out that Nasato vidyate bhava. Asata. Asata means, that which is temporary. That has no endurance. And na bhavo vidyate sata. Sata means that which is eternal. That which is eternal is always everlasting. So this is the nature of both what? The temporary and the eternal. So here now I will share the screen and show you this verse. Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, uboyaropi drishtantas, tvanayos tattvadarshibhi. Ubayor, both, understanding the nature. Drishta antas. Drishti means vision, anta means anta. Deep inside in their heart, who have become fully self-realized, they can see these two natures. To anoyas tattvadarshibhi, they are tattvadarshis. Now here Prabhupada, those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent. Now here Prabhupada is using a square bracket. There is no endurance. And of the eternal, Prabhupada is using a square bracket, the soul. There is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. So actually, if you see from the Gita's perspective or the speaker's perspective, that is Lord Krishna, here Krishna is explaining universal principle of matter and spirit. Matter is temporary. In that sense, it is non-existing. Spirit is eternal and it is ever existing. Or the spiritual world and the material world. Asatoma satgamayo. Asat, this material world is called as Asat, and Sat is the spiritual world. Tamasoma jyotirgamayo. Tamasa is the material world, darkness. Jyoti is the spiritual world. So this is the nature of matter and spirit. So Krishna in one sense is speaking universal principles here. This is a universal principle he's speaking. But in the context of the discussion between Arjuna and Krishna, Arjuna is concerned with what is going to happen on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He is concerned with their bodies. So these two, interplay of matter and spirit is there within, our, body, because we have a material body which is Asat. So it is non-existent in one sense. And there is the Atma, which is Sat. So actually it is speaking about universal principles, but in the context of the Gita, for Arjuna's purpose, it is between Sat and Asat refer to the soul and the body. So that is why Prabhupada in the square bracket is very much making it clear. Similarly here, there is no appearance of the holy name, that means pure name. And this pure name can be taken once by a Kanishta or regularly by a Madhyama, and he can give pure name to others, that is the Mahabhagavat. So if you commit offenses in the form of finding these faults, 3 types of defects, and make false accusations, this is the 4th thing now, then you end up offending the holy name. And whether you have offended a Vaishnava, you don't know that. But you have offended the holy name, you'll come to know about it. How will you come to know about it? Anyone would like to answer? After this discussion, I will take up your question, Maya Narasimha. Whether you have committed an offense to a Vaishnava, you might not know whether you have criticized. But how will you come to know that you have, committed? Yeah, there is no taste in chanting. There's no taste in chanting. Yes. So we lose our taste in chanting. So that is why we should be very, very careful. And the reason why we cannot experience the true potency of the holy name is because of namaprads which we have committed, being in spiritual life in this life and maybe in previous lives also. So that is why we should be very, very careful. Maya Narasimha Prabhuji, you have a question?
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhu, this question related to Parikshit's incident, as it is Daivotpanna incident. But similar incidents we see in other great personalities in Bhagavatam, like Chitraket Maharaj and Lord Shiva, and also Indridumna Maharaj with Agastya Muni, and also Pundarika Vidyanidhi in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Though these are great personalities, but still they have faced the reactions. Even in case of Parikshit Maharaj, he had faced the reaction of that whatever the mistake he had done. Though he has gone back to Godhead, and similarly Chitraket also has to take birth as Rudrasura, and Indrajumna Maharaj as Gajendra. So what we can infer, though it is Daivotpanna, but still they have faced the consequence of that offense or mistake, whatever they have done.
Okay, I got a question. Firstly, I would like to clarify that I explained the pastime of Parikshit Maharaj with respect to understanding, immediate cause, remote cause, and ultimate cause. And definitely, for Nitya Siddhas, there is no question of, committing any wrong on them. And this is directly orchestrated by Krishna. It is directly under the Krishna's control. So Krishna, when the sadhakas are practicing, Krishna might, by his divine arrangement, put that devotee into trouble. And this trouble what the devotee goes through also, is actually to bestow mercy. Krishna bestows his mercy by which he can soon come back to him. He can learn the lesson, he can rectify himself and soon come back to him. Now, the three examples which you gave, I would like to again clarify these examples. Firstly, about Chitraketu Maharaj. Chitraketu Maharaj, Vishwanath Chakra Thakur in his Madhurya Kadamani makes it very clear that actually he did not commit any offense to Lord Shiva. In fact, when he laughed, he was actually, amazed at, the wonderful quality of Lord Shiva. How glorious is Lord Shiva. Parvati misunderstood it, and Parvati cursed, and Chitraketu Maharaj accepted this curse. If he had committed an aparadh of neglecting Lord Shiva, and because of that aparadh, he had faced any consequence, his prema would have come down. He was already, an eternal liberated soul. He was worshipping Shankarshan. He was, with the Gandharvas glorifying the Lord of his heart. And we see in the next birth, although Vritrasura was an asura, but his heart, if you see the prayers of Vritrasura, in fact, the Bhagavatam is glorified with the pastime of Vritrasura. Oh, that Bhagavatam which has the pastime of Vritrasura. So Vritrasura's real pure devotion comes out, in his prayers. So had he committed an offense, then he would have come down from his prema stage to a lower level. But his prema increased manifold times because it was the Lord's arrangement that the Lord wanted his devotee Chitraketu to come back soon. And Krishna arranged this so that he can quickly take a asura body and come back to him. This is in the case of Maharaj Chitraketu. Similarly, is Jay and Vijay. They were given a choice, 7 lifetimes or 3 lifetimes as asuras. They said 3 lifetimes. So even for his pure devotees like Maharaj Bharat, that's why seeing the pastime, especially of Maharaj Bharat, how at the stage of Bhava, he, somehow got attracted to this deer, and thinking of the deer in deer consciousness, he left this world. In fact, it is not a pastime where you can think that, oh, from the Bhagavatam, we can learn the lesson that how at the stage of Bhava one falls down. No, that is not the lesson to be concluded. Actually, it is mentioned that Maharaj Bharat prema for the Lord increased 1,000 times more in the deer's body. And in Maharaj Jad Bharat body, it increased 1,000 times still more. So the Lord sometimes arranges these, incidents to happen ultimately so that his devotees can come back to him near. And especially Parikshit did not suffer because of any reaction, because of the curse. That's why 7 days without drinking water or without any sleep, he was fully focused. Nor did Chitraketu suffer in one sense. In fact, what to speak about these great personalities who are there in the Bhagavatam, whom we should, follow in their footsteps. Even as practicing devotees, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that the devotee sufferings and old age which come, there is no time effect which is acting on the devotees. Ayur haranti vaipumsam, that verse is there, no? That
Yeah.
doesn't act on devotees. It doesn't act on devotees. So we see that devotees also become old. They go through disease, suffering, and death. No, all this disease and suffering ultimately, brings them closer to Krishna. They feel more separation from Krishna. So Krishna arranges, the devotee's suffering and, the devotee's old age and all this, so that his hankering for him or his, love for him, his attachment for him increases more and more. So this is for even sadhakas in this world. So what to speak of these personalities in the Bhagavatam?
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Any other questions anyone has? Okay. So we discussed this significance of this, there is no manifestation of pure name. Now here is a very important point. Nama spurti na hoile Vaishnav hoya yaya na. As long as there is no appearance of the pure holy name, one cannot become a Vaishnava. Now again, once it is, because even once who chants the name is a Vaishnava. But the real meaning and the real sense of the word Vaishnava is one who is taking the pure name of the Lord. Vaishnava is somebody who is situated on the transcendental platform. He is on the Vishuddha platform. So there is no appearance of the pure holy name. Now here is a footnote. Again, the footnote is clarifying the statement. The underlying principle is that wrongly blaming and criticizing a Vaishnava for any of the faults just mentioned, which fit into 3 categories, leads to namaprad, offenses against the holy name. If one commits namaprad, a spurti, divine revelation of name will never take place. And without such spurtis, it is not possible to become a Vaishnava. So without, getting that spurti is a divine revelation, in fact, a divine vision by which we understand that I am spirit soul, and we see this whole universe as Krishna's body, and we see the Dham as completely spiritual. So until this doesn't happen, we are not Vaishnavas in that sense. So the reason is because of namaprad, and namaprad is because finding defects in these 3 categories and wrongly blaming. Such is the heavy implication of, Vaishnav aparad. Okay. The next theme is the faults of others can be deliberated upon if one has a virtuous motive. So there can be deliberation of the faults, but if there is a virtuous motive. Let us see what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has to say about this. In this regard, one can have the following doubt. Ukta chari prakara dosha vetita Vaishnavara Anya doshar alochna kare uchit kina. Is it appropriate to discuss the various defects of a Vaishnava other than the above mentioned 4 types of defects? Now 4 types include the 3 defects which we see before taking up to Krishna consciousness, while practicing Krishna consciousness and Daiva, and then actually allegations or accusations, false accusations, these 4 types. is it appropriate then to discuss? Oh, don't discuss only, never discuss. This can be, one extreme. We can go towards our attitudes, So is it appropriate to discuss? So here, Uttar A, Vaishnavara Ukta Chari Prakar Dosh Vyatita Anya Dosh Haite Parena. The answer is that the Vaishnava cannot have any defect other than the above mentioned 4 kinds of defects, including false accusations leveled on him. So there are, apart from these 4 things, there is nothing else. In the Vaishnava, there cannot be any other defect which can be discussed. Yandare ukta 3 prakar dosh vyatita anya dosh ache tahara Vaishnava boli shastra ukta hana nai. Those who do have defects other than the 4 mentioned 3 kinds of defects have not been referred to in the scriptures as Vaishnavas. So Vaishnavas means they will only have these 3 kinds of defects. And if you're discussing something else, then, they are, not referred only in the scriptures. And there cannot be any other discussion any other than the 4 mentioned kinds of defects. So actually, if you now little bit deliberate and contemplate, we can see that whatever defects we have because of our conditioned state, we have a defective vision, and it is this defective vision by which we see, others. Drishte Swabhava Janita Vapushcha, as we had mentioned that. And that is why we see these kind of faults in Vaishnavas. And there can be no other faults except these 4 kinds or these 3 kinds. The 4th is the acquisition, basically. A stele vivech a jiva matrera dosha sakala sad uddesha vyatita kaharo alochana kara uchit noy. In this regard, it should also be considered that it is not appropriate for anyone to discuss the defects of any living being without a good purpose. Jiva matra dosh sakal uddesh vyatita kahara alochana kare uchit nai. Not to speak of Vaishnavas, it is not appropriate to discuss defects of any living being without a good purpose. Sad uddesh. Now, what is the sad uddesh? Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going to clarify further. Vaishnav Ninda Aparad. Criticism of Vaishnavas is offense. Anya Jiva Ninda Pap. Criticism of other living beings is a sin. So this, in the beginning also, we had discussed difference between Aparad and Pap. Again, he's clarifying. If you are criticizing other living beings, we are committing sin. If we are criticizing Vaishnavas, we are committing aparad. Now, I have a question to all of you here. Why is there the tendency in the heart for criticism? We can now generally understand from our experience in Krishna consciousness and with this discussion which we are having, especially on this topic. Yes, one wonderful answer has come in the chat box. Yes, second answer also has come up, which is correct. I would like to hear from others. You can type in the chat box. Third answer is also correct. I would like to hear from others. Okay, there is Sri Krishna Kant Prabhuji. He has mentioned as anger. Let's go to the deepest root of anger. What is that? Okay. Yes, many have answered as envy. Now let us go a little more detail. Where is this envy situated? The envy is there in the heart. And what is the original constitution of the soul? The soul's original constitution or the natural inclination of the soul is what? Love for Krishna. Yes, it is love for Krishna. And coming in this material world, that has transformed into envy. Envy, actually, the envy is to Krishna. And only when we take up Krishna consciousness, we understand that when we criticize Vaishnavas, it is just a reflection of our envy towards Krishna. So bad it is to know that. It is actually a manifestation that when we find defects in Vaishnavas and we criticize Vaishnavas, actually it is a manifestation of our envy towards Krishna. That means we are facing our own anartha in one sense. So this is why to root out this envy is not a easy thing to do. So that is why it requires a lot of meditation, prayer. Because if we have developed pure love for Krishna, then definitely Nindhadi Shunya Hridaya Ipsita Sangha Labdva. That heart is pure from any criticism. Nindadi Shunya Hridaya, as Upadeshamrita is saying. So this is a point also to be deeply contemplated upon. Vaishnav Ninda Aparad, Anya Jiva Ninda Pap. Any Vaishnav Tahar Se Rupe Papoy Ruchi Hoy Na. He who is a Vaishnava has no taste for such sin too. So we are in the process of becoming Vaishnavas, and we have a lot of taste for chanting. Yes. How many of you admit we have a lot of taste for chanting? Yes or no? How many of you admit? How many of you admit that we have? No, we don't have taste for chanting. Yes. So we have a lot of taste, in discussing all these kind of prajalpas, all these kind of, when this kind of, talks begin, there is so much taste. The mind has so much taste for this. And that is why we don't have taste for holy name. That's why we should avoid and be always in the Sangh where there is only Matchitta Matagata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam. This is a kind of activity we should make a resolve that, Vaishnava means he has no taste for such a sin too. He doesn't have this kind of taste. Now, proper motive is of three types: desiring the welfare of the person criticized, desiring the welfare of the world, and desiring one's own welfare. So Sad Uddesh was mentioned. When there is a Sad Uddesh, and this is of these three types, then in what context, criticism, is allowed? Let us see now. Sad Uddeshara Sahita A Para Dosh Alochna Taha Shastra Nindita Hoy Na. Sad Uddesh Teen Prakar. Discussion of others' defects with a good purpose has not been criticized in the scriptures. There are three kinds of good purposes. Now, anyone can, before I go into the three kinds, anyone knows from the pastime of Srimad Bhagavatam where, there is discussion of others' defects, that is a criticism of a Vaishnava, is done with a Sad Uddesh. I at least know one pastime, but let us see if some other devotees can come up with some other answer. Do you know any pastimes which are narrated in the Srimad Bhagavatam where there is a criticism of a Vaishnava, finding fault with the Vaishnava's previous activity? And there is discussion, quite elaborate discussion also about it. Anyone knows from the Srimad Bhagavatam any pastime? Okay, Maya Narasimha Prabhu, I would like to unmute you. What is Narad Muni's discussion done? Where?
Prabhuji, he narrates himself, I think, about his past life where he was Upabarana, and
No, that will not fall in this category. That is inspiration, how even from a from that kind of a background, if you come in association of Vaishnavas, you can, attain perfection.
Okay, Prabhu.
Is definitely finding a defect. Aja Amil's pastime is again is a great hope, hope-giving pastime for us. How the Lord has love for his devotees, that we saw from 9.31 verse. Any other pastime anyone knows? Anyone else would like to answer? Daksha. Yes, Daksha would definitely fall. Govinda Prabhu is answering Daksha. And Daksha pastime, in fact, I will discuss this when I come to the next themes which we are going to discuss. But there is one pastime where Maitreya Rishi is speaking about the defect of Lord Brahma. You know something? He's telling Vidura. He's saying that Brahma was attracted to his daughter Vak and he followed her. So Maitreya Rishi is speaking about, a great Maha Vaishnava, Maha Bhagavat like Lord Brahma, who is our Sampradaya Acharya. We are from the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. How he also got attracted to his own daughter Vak and he was following her. Now this discussion is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 3rd canto. And Maitreya Rishi is narrating this to Vidura. And this happened in some other kalpa, this whole pastime. Something which is not belonging to this day of Brahma, which has not happened, some previous kalpa, old incident. And Maitreya Rishi is narrating this. And the reason he is narrating this is to give lessons to the conditioned souls, all those souls who has come in this material world. How lust is so powerful that even Brahma can fall prey to it. So how much we should be cautious about it. So that is the reason with Sat Uddesh, Maitreya Rishi is pointing out the defect of Lord Brahma there in that pastime. So this is one pastime which perfectly falls in this category. And this is how Bhaktivinoda Thakur also mentions in one of his books, Bhakti Aloka. So that's why I'm narrating this. Daksha is also, we can find out how Daksha found a fault with Shiva and committed a great aparadh, and what are consequences he had to face for that. In fact, the whole pastimes, in the flow of the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you see, in the 3rd canto, there is the creation, Purusha avatars create. And then there is the avatar Vara, who actually gets earth back into its natural orbit, so that only on earth dharma can be practiced and the souls can get liberated. So Vara lifts the earth back from the Garbhoda Koshan and situates in its orbit. So the Vara avatar pastime is there. The 3rd avatar is Kapila. So the Purusha avatars by the 24 elements bind the conditioned soul in this 24 tattvas. We are caught up in this 24 elements. So Kapil Shiksha, the Sankhya analysis, explains how one can break through this 24 elements and ultimately attain liberation by 3 processes: Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and the topmost process is Bhakti Yoga. So how Bhakti Yoga one can become liberated? Kapil Muni has given in 3rd canto, and 3rd canto ends. In fact, 3rd canto, the Bhagavatam gets over because Kapil Muni has given a shiksha, how we can practice Nirgun Bhakti and become liberated. So remaining from the 4th canto, all these instructions of Kapila, how in the form of great devotees we can learn these lessons and practice this sadhana bhakti in order to attain perfection. Many of the pastimes narrate how from Daksha we should understand that because of false ego, ahankar, it is because of ahankar we are come in this, we are bound. How by ahankar we can get blinded and commit aparadh. How because of envy, there is a pastime between Indra and King Prithu. There was the competition, and ultimately Vishnu told, be satisfied with 99 yagyas. And Prutu being a Satyavish avatar, he agreed. And he was able to, ultimately, Lord Vishnu came and gave darshan to him. So he attained success in one sense, you see. So all these other pastimes are narrated in order for the conditioned souls to take lessons in their practice of sadhana bhakti. And in that context, these 7 chapters of the Daksha Shiva pastime is very, very important for us. As long as, the soul is not free from this false ego, where we can relish Krishna Katha. So in that sense also, Daksha pastime is important. So this is the Vak story where, Sat Udesh is there. So there are 3 kinds of good purposes. Ye vyaktira paap loy alochna kara yaya tahate yadi tahar kalyan uddishta hoy tabe se alochna shubha. If one can discuss a person's sin and that discussion aims at bringing about his auspiciousness, such a discussion is auspicious. If you are thinking about his kalyan, he's been falsely accusing me, but now you're deliberating how I can, do his kalyan, then that can be, really considered auspicious. I'll give you one extreme example for us to understand this. This is about how great Mahabhagavats, although sometimes they might be ridiculed, or sometimes they might be, people might be so envious that they might try to kill him, but still their heart is like an ocean of mercy and compassion, and they can forgive. And we know the pastime of Jad Bharat. He was being actually, his head was supposed to be, cut by these worshippers of Kali. And in fact, Kali only took compassion and killed all her followers. So, in that sense, Jad Bharat showed mercy on these worshippers of Kali, and Kali killing these demons, showed compassion. Then they got purified by that pastime. There is one pastime of one king, Upachari Vasu. King Upacharu, I think, or Upachari. I don't recollect. It is there in the Mahabharata and the Vishnu Dharmotar. So this king, on behalf of the Devatas, fought against the demons. And, he won on behalf of the Devatas. So the demons became envious of him. And King Upachari came back to earth, and he was, at last he became detached from kingly life and went to Sutalok to do tapasya. And he was thinking, oh, how much sin I have committed by killing so many demons, as part of my Kshatriya Dharma. So his heart had become pure, and he had attained the Lord in his heart. And he was absorbed in meditation there. Now, the demons who were defeated, they still maintain their envy towards this king. Oh, because of this king only who sided with the Devatas, we lost the battle. So they went down to Sutaloka in order to kill the king. But they found that any weapon they were trying to use and kill, nothing was happening to King Upachari. So they were shocked and stunned. They came back to their guru, and they asked Shukracharya, he's the guru of the demons. So Shukracharya mentioned, because Vishnu is in heart, you cannot do anything to him. So at last, then how do we kill him now? Moment, he forgets contemplation of Vishnu, then when his heart Vishnu he is not carrying, that time you can kill him. So how to do that? So because he's a great devotee of Vishnu, go and preach atheism to him. So these demons went down to Sutaloka and started, preaching atheism. And devotees, don't like atheistic philosophy. So when this king Upachari Vasu saw that, see these demons just to kill me, now they are gone so degraded, that they are, criticizing or preaching atheism. So he felt compassion. He felt compassion on them, and because he felt compassion, all the demons' hearts transformed and they all became Vaishnavas. So, the other persons may be discussing faults of others, devotees, but we should always think, if we are really, thinking of their kalyan, and then such kind of a discussion is auspicious. This is the first. Jagatara Mangala Sadhanar Jana Yadi Papira Pap Alochna Kara Yaya Tabe Taha Shubha Karyara Madhe Ganita. If one can discuss the sin of a sinner to bring about auspiciousness to the world, Jagatara Kalyan Mangala, that discussion is counted as an auspicious act. Taha Shubha Karyara Madhe Ganita. Third, Nijera Mangala Sadhanara Jana Yadi se alochna hoy, taha toy, guna, boy, dosha, nai. If such a discussion takes place to bring about one's own auspiciousness, Nijera Mangala Sadhanera Jana Yadi se alochna, that is also good, not bad. So somebody, Vaishnava, because he had some faults and, he goes into bad association and then he leaves Vaishnavism. And if you start criticizing him, oh, I knew this Vaishnava before he was like that only. This kind of criticism leads to aparadh. Whereas, oh, what are the lessons we should take for my own purification so that I will not commit these mistakes and I will be in the right path. So for one's own welfare like this kind of discussion, it can be auspicious and it is also good. So these are the three ways, sad uddesh. A sakala sad uddeshe, Valmikira Purva Charitra, Jagai Madaira Purva Charitra, Prabhrita Ati Hasika Vartanta Sarvada Nishpapa Rupe Alochita Hoya Thake. It is for these good purposes that historical narrations such as Valmiki's previous activities. Valmiki was Ratnakar. So you might say, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, somebody before coming to Krishna consciousness, we should not discuss about his previous life. Sadhura Mool or Nadira, Sadhura Kul or Nadira Mool, or Rishi Mukh and Sadhur Mukh. We should never go back. But we regularly discuss pastime of how he was Ratnakar and how Narad Muni told him to chant Mara Mara because he could not chant Ram. Such was his condition. But it is a source of great auspiciousness if we discuss that even such sinful person also can become a pure devotee. Then why I also cannot become a pure devotee? Jagai Madai pastimes, previous pastimes are discussed quite in detail in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat to show the potency of the holy name. Many times devotees in ISKCON, sometimes, they feel that, oh, I am very sinful. I cannot be delivered. This is not because of their humility. This is because of their, false ego, they speak. Nobody can claim that he is more sinful than Jagai and Madai. Jagai and Madai, nobody can compete. So if Jagai and Madai can be delivered, any sinful person on planet Earth can be delivered. So that is how Jagai and Madai pastime has been discussed. And then there are what? Aitihasik. Aitihasik means what is narrated in the histories and the Puranas. And I explained one, that is Lord Brahma's pastime, following walk. Have always and sinlessly discussed. Nishpapa Rupe Alochita Hoy Thake. Now, next session we will take in the next class. There is one question, so I will take up that question. Yes, Mataji.
By mistake, it got. I pressed that button.
Okay. Any other question anyone has till now? What we discussed? These three Sad Uddesh. where Vaishnava discussion can be, done. Okay, let me see first. 36. 1 second, just a minute, please hold on. Okay, there are only 8-10 slides more. I don't know whether I should take and finish it or leave it for the next class. Okay, Maya Narsim Prabhu has one question. Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. I want some practical answer, Prabhu, because now we are in a community practicing devotees. We meet so many devotees and we see so many devotees in temple around, and we associate with them. We give talks, and we have been given some responsibilities to assist them. So in seeing all these things in the practical sense, what I should do through these lectures, what we have learned at Vaishnava Ninda, what exactly I should do? I should not worry about anybody and simply practice my own devotional service, or I just take lessons from their faults and not repeat in my life. How I should do that, Prabhu?
Basically, when we are in the association of devotees, this tendency to fault finding and criticism is there. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, through his whole essay, has now identified who is a Vaishnava, identified what is Vaishnava criticism. So this we should avoid. Now, as part of managerial duty, you have something as a manager to do. We should see things, as I explained in the last class, from how Krishna views his devotees, and from an institutional perspective, what is necessary to be done, that has to be done. Thirdly, most important is, yes, when some Daivutpan or whatever happens, if there is some sad uddesh, like all the three reasons which are mentioned, and for one's own purification, one discusses. Now, this discussion is among ourselves or only with our very confidential devotees, Sadhyati Sangha. And the purpose is very, very clear, what lessons to learn for our own purification. If with that clear intention, this discussion is done to, to actually extract lessons for our own purification, then it is very, very safe. This, if we do these three things, if we do, then we should, most importantly, we should, humble ourselves, understanding this philosophy that right now I don't have that darshan, Vidya Vinay Sampanne, Brahmani Gavihastini, Suniche Vasopakecha, Pandita Samadarshana. I don't have that darshan by which I can, by spiritual vision, see how that all Vaishnavas are engaged in Krishna service. So I lack that spiritual vision. So, and now, at least now I have the Shastra vision. So let me see by the Shastra vision and develop genuine humility so that I can advance, take up to Krishna consciousness, chant the pure name, and develop that spurti, that vision, so that ultimately I can, successfully execute Krishna consciousness and serve, the real mission of life is to go back or develop love for Krishna and preach, by which we also become dear to Krishna. So in that positive perspective, we should see things. Is it okay?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
You have something more to say?
Just one thing, Prabhu. That's what practicing our own bhakti itself is a great struggle, and amidst that, keeping note of all these faults, fault finding tendencies is another challenge. So it is a very great tapasya, I'm thinking, Prabhuji, and I need devotees' blessings to do this well. That's all, Prabhu.
Yeah, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is to say that because he was very strict, to his grahasthas as well as the brahmacharis to chant 64 rounds. And many devotees is to tell their spiritual master Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that it's really difficult to chant 64 rounds. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say that if you stop doing prajalpana, you will find the time to chant. We take a lot of pleasure in doing prajalpa. So this prajalpa is, is the root cause. We in the train when we sit, even our devotees start chatting like anything. But are we sitting and absorbing in our study and doing kirtan and bhajan in the entire journey? But when it comes to the tendency to talk, prajalpa, it's very strong. That is why Rupa Goswami has said, prajalpa is what? Shadbir bhakti vinashati. So that's why we should be very, very careful in our thoughts, our speech, our actions. So this is a matter of cultivation. Any other questions? I have 10 more slides, but we are already running out of time, so I will not take up. We will stop here. If devotees have any questions, they can raise their hand. Otherwise, we'll stop here. Any other questions or clarifications? Okay, then. Thank you very, very much. Srila